It's still shocking just how good Splatoon's single player was. Here was a mode that ostensibly was simply designed to help players get a feel for how the game played and use that training to improve their skills in multiplayer. But it still ended up being just plain fun with some truly fantastic bosses. That's why so many fans have been dying to see what Splatoon 2 will do with the same mode. And from what we can see in this latest trailer, it has the potential to be just as good, if not better. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We're here for one reason. It's time for the old analysis machine to step up and really provide a good look at the single player. For as good as the trailer was, there's a ton of moments squeezed into every second of it, and we're here to find all of its secrets and hidden details. So let's see what we can find. Things begin simple enough with an Inkling arriving in Inkopolis Square, but it's the first time we've seen it from this angle. There's Krusty Sean's food truck just from behind. It has an awning over its back entrance and the door is open. We wonder if we could actually go inside, but it seems unlikely. There's one more thing to note about Sean's food truck, but let's look at the rest of this scene first. To the right of the Inkling, there's an ad that seems to be showing off hairstyles, or at least the same style from different angles. To the left is a crosswalk, though we still have no idea what could be behind the Inkling. It definitely seems bigger than the alley where Spike could be found in Inkopolis Plaza. Looking ahead, we can see the obvious amiibo box on the left, where players will be able to access their functionality. Behind that, we can see construction going on just beyond the fence. There's a construction vehicle as well as a half-finished building that still has some kind of ad on it. Inkling eyes are part of the ad, but we're not sure what's exactly being sold. Stranger still is the billboard next to it, which seems to display a series of 6 finger bones, but we have no idea what that could be about. At least there's one ad we think we get. There's a digital announcement board in the scene, and above it is a small logo that's really reminiscent of the Virgin logo. We've talked before about Splatoon 2 pulling ideas from the real world as far as brands, and this seems to be another example of that. Returning to the construction, specifically the half-finished building, it does make us wonder if it'll ever be finished and act as a new feature for Splatoon 2 sometime in the future. And if that's true, could even more buildings pop up over time to take advantage of the square's popularity as the new place to be? But before we move on from this section of the square, we wanted to mention the solar panels on top of Krusty Sean's food truck. It seems like such a small detail, but it may have bigger implications. We'll return to why that is very soon. The rest of the square, though, is pretty much what we've seen before, though we have spotted a few extra details around the main multiplayer building. The bench where you can find merch is to the right of it, while Judd and Little Judd are sleeping on the left. Each of the cats even have food bowls nearby, appropriately enough in Callie and Marie's neon pink and green. Inside the main building, we can see screens displaying levels, but nothing new. We only ever see the Reef and Muscle Forge Fitness. But beyond the Judds, we can see the path leading up to Salmon Run, and next to that path is Marie, standing above a grate in her kimono. The Inkling immediately heads toward her, but there's some more details to see from this angle. For one, the lanterns near Salmon Run are actually shaped like the salmonid, and there's even a frying pan, one of the weapons of the salmon, behind Marie. Another detail is the new Ammo Night store is behind her as well. It's fittingly placed considering Sheldon has a role in the new single player, as we'll eventually see. But let's focus on Marie. As the Inkling approaches her, she slips through the grates. However, we don't actually get to see her squid form. She moves her parasol in front of her as she does it, but we can see that she really just slips through the grates as is before the ink pops up to cover the rest of the transition. Not a huge deal, but it would have been a fun Easter egg to see. The grate itself brings us back to Octo Valley, where we can immediately see a tangled mess of megaphones, antennas, and satellite dishes. There are even signs displaying a windsock, an anti-squid symbol, and what may be some kind of flag. Either way, the purpose behind them, or at least 2 of them, isn't exactly clear. The main draw here, though, is Marie herself, as well as her Japanese-styled shack, which seems to be where she's living. On top of the shack is something that almost appears embedded in the roof. We can see a crank attached to it, but it's not clear what it's all for. And honestly, it even slightly resembles a fishing pole reel. The shack is also adorned with a symbol, the same that's on Marie's kimono, which likely serves as her family crest. Behind Marie is a ramp that likely leads to the first set of levels and slowly unlocks more, just like the first game. We even see a conversation with Marie where she begins her pitch to have your Inkling help out against the Octarian menace. But there's a lot of interesting touches here that ties into the Squid Sisters stories that had been releasing up until this trailer. Those stories, if you haven't been keeping up, detail what happened to Callie and Marie after the first game's final Splatfest. Splatoon 2 has already been stated as taking place 2 years after the conclusion of that game. It's why tastes have changed and the hub has moved to the square. The stories themselves pick up 9 months after the final Splatfest, where Callie and Marie are more popular than ever, but the two's careers have been keeping them apart. Marie worries about the lingering resentment from Callie since she's the one fans chose for the Splatfest, but it doesn't seem to be the case. And in this strained relationship, Marie goes home to her parents in Calamari County for a vacation. But that vacation is cut short by Callie's disappearance. When Marie goes to investigate, she discovers that not only has DJ Octavio escaped from his snow globe prison, but the great Zapfish has disappeared again as well. Marie then goes underground to try to find an Inkling to help in their rescue, restoring the Squid Beak Splatoon once again. What's not stated is how long she's been searching. Like we said, the stories pick up 9 months later, but the game is set 2 years later. We don't know how long the stories cover time-wise, but we think it's been at least a year since Callie and the Great Zapfish's disappearance. And that's because our Inkling doesn't seem to know Marie or the Squid Sisters at all. They've been forgotten by the general public. And the Zapfish's disappearance has affected squid life as well. Remember the solar panels on Sean's truck? Yeah, it seems squids have had to find alternate power sources since the Great Zapfish's kidnapping. We even saw hints of this in Salmon Run. We don't see Marie's full explanation, but a release screenshot does provide a little dialogue where she asks us to rip the Octarians limb from limb from limb and so on. She's ready for a fight after all this time. But this same screenshot provides a better look at the newspaper in her shack, and it features the Great Zapfish. Not too surprising, but it's definitely still on squids' minds. Another screenshot provides a look at Marie's shack from the right. There seems to be a few pet cages, though we can't see the animal inside. More interesting are the generators, which seem to confirm that yes, Inkopolis is still having power issues since the Great Zapfish's disappearance. It's wonderful ways like this that subtly show the effects of it being gone. This image also shows a little more of what's on the left, and while some things are obscured by the tree, we can see this orange box to the left of Marie. It kind of looks like a toolbox emblazoned with Sheldon's symbol, so this has something to do with your weapons. There are also warnings below that we can't quite make out, as well as an attachment that seems to have squid symbols in various colors. Maybe you have to return here to upgrade your weapon, or there's some new functionality that'll be introduced. But it's time to get to the real meat of the trailer, the single player in action. And right from the beginning, the Inkling launches into a new world decked out in the Squid Beak Splatoon's hero suit. It appears mostly the same, except that the sneakers now have what appear to be shock absorbers, or it could aid in rail grinding as we see later in the trailer. Either way, this is certainly the same Octo Valley we're familiar with. The panels in the background still simulate the upper world, and there are even signs nearby telling us where to go. Also, this is either a really short level or a very twisty one, as we can see the Zapfish marking the end of the stage in the distance. As the camera provides highlights of the Inkling, we get a good look at the new weapon for single player that resembles an assault rifle. It's branded by Sheldon, so we definitely know he's equipping us this time around. So is this just a new form of the hero shot? We rarely get to see the weapon in action, but there is one moment where it's put to use. It's an extremely short clip, but we think it's at least a little more accurate than the splatter shot, as each burst of ink seems to line up with the last. However, we don't think it'll actually be that much more accurate. For all intents and purposes, this is the splatter shot of the mode, and if single player is designed to get everyone ready for multiplayer combat, then it seems counterproductive to have a weapon that's naturally more accurate. It would throw off those who got used to it. Now, there's still the chance that it is this accurate and could serve as a weapon to be unlocked once single player is finished, much like the hero equipment from the first game. in which case it would serve as an excellent choice for players who prefer that splatter shot after the single player. There's another reason we think this is the splatter shot though. At a later point in the trailer, we see a kind of drone carrying a package. It doesn't belong to the Octarians though, as the top looks like Sheldon, right down to his goggles and helmet. He actually uses the drone to equip the Inkling, and despite the super close-up of this scene, it's really about the size of a normal drone. It drops the package and the player is immediately equipped with the hero charger. This brings up several questions. Is each level designed around a specific weapon, or could the player actually change weapons at each checkpoint? We even get a few lines from Sheldon as he talks about gathering battle data. This would seem to imply that the weapon used is based around something pre-chosen, and if that's the case, the levels may be designed more around each weapon's utility, unlike the amiibo missions of the first Splatoon. However, there's later evidence that suggests this isn't the case, at least not entirely. We'll get into the specifics of why that is in time, but for now we wonder if the weapons can be exchanged, is it done for free, or will Sheldon charge you power eggs? After all, right from the outset, we can see that power eggs are back in full force. So at the very least, you should be able to upgrade your equipment to be even more powerful, or maybe even unlock more sub-weapons. The aesthetic for this first level is definitely strange, with bottles hanging in the air while covered with multicolored bandages. They're filled with a blue liquid that may be ink, but we're honestly not sure what they could be for. Otherwise, there's buildings in the distance, and the one on the right seems to be under construction. The Octarians still just grab whatever they can find, it seems, but the next stage has a more understandable theme. We see the Inkling running along a wooden incline lined with power eggs and the returning sponge blocks. The stage seems to be based on the beach owing to the bright blue sky and boardwalk feel to the incline. More importantly though, we get a look at a new variety of Octo Trooper. It looks the same except that it attacks from the air thanks to a single balloon. And they might have replaced the octocopters completely, as we don't see the old flying enemies at all. Another Octo Trooper, this one normal, is in the distance at the top of the ramp next to an umbrella and an orange crate that could contain more power eggs or another bonus. And speaking of bonuses, we can see that the hero suit can still be upgraded with better armor. The helmet has seen a change though. No longer does it resemble a bike helmet, but more of a military helmet, at least from the back. We also have a slight idea of where the Inkling goes from here. There's a graded floor at the top left, meaning we can ink our way up to it. At that point, we can follow the grate around to the right. To our left, the incline also features more signs pointing us where to go. The Octarians really don't want us to get lost this time around, but we're provided another look at the beach stage in the next scene. In fact, we can even see the ramp we were just on in the distance on the left side, so it seems we work our way to it from the top right. What's strange though is that there's no sign of the sponge blocks, so it's possible that they haven't loaded in yet, or the stage is still being reworked in various ways, as Splatoon often makes plenty of tweaks during development. Anyway, as the Inkling super jumps from the green pool, we see more of the stage. There's another green pool on the right side at the top of the ramp, so it seems these mark super jumps. But the weirdest thing about this jump is how clean the ink is. What we mean by that is that there's barely any evidence of struggle between the player and the Octarians. Usually there's ink everywhere after a fight thanks to missed shots and splat explosions. So another reason the sponge blocks may not be there is because this is a development version of the level with the Octarians taken out for the most part. At least that's our best guess. The water is also extremely blue, to the point where it almost looks like ink. In fact, it's the same color blue that we saw inside the floating bottles. What the connection could mean though, we're not exactly sure, but there does seem to be more than one beach-based level. The next scene features a brand new obstacle, a bouncy floor that seems based on pool rafts. They automatically make the Inkling jump and are not able to be inked, as we can see from the bouncing purple globs. Rather than go under the moving wall, players will need to jump over it. We can see that they don't bounce high enough though to actually make it over, indicating that a timed press of the jump button is necessary to get some extra height. Also, we're not sure why, but the wall looks more like a cheese grater. Maybe that's to discourage the Inklings from using their squid form to phase through? It wouldn't be a great end, that's for sure. Of course, there's the Octarian threat as well, with another Octo Trooper and the returning Octo Sniper. There's not much more to say about them, but we do see that there are more bouncy rafts behind them leading to higher platforms. So this is definitely this stage's main gimmick. A new stage theme is shown next and seems to be set high above an Octarian City based on the lit buildings we can see far below. But the big revelation here is the new boost pads that quickly launch the Inklings forward. However, this must be done with proper timing as ink tubes will jut out, likely in a set pattern. We'd expect the player would be instantly splatted or pushed off the platform if one connected. It could be tricky to time, but it makes sense that it would be difficult since we can see the Zapfish just beyond this obstacle. The Octarian City is featured again along with what may be the coolest addition to the single player, grind rails. There were ink rails in the first game, but they handled differently, with the Inkling riding inside of the rails rather than on top of them. The process of grinding seems relatively automatic, with balloons to shoot for power eggs keeping the player active. They also provide a guide of how the grind rail will weave its way around the giant mechanical octopus. It doesn't seem to be active though, and is instead just part of the scenery to keep the grind rail dynamic. As the camera curves, we can see some kind of contraption leading the rail forward, and it likely has to be inked to move initially. But this new angle also shows where we came from with an area covered in pink ink. What's interesting is that we can make out a traditional ink rail starter bulb there as well that may eventually connect to the beginning of the grind rail. Or the grind rail could be replacing the idea of the ink rail completely, as we see multiple examples from later in the trailer. This scene shows the beginning of the grind rail and it looks exactly like the ink rail bulb. The only difference is the two poles on either side of the bulb. But like we thought, the grind rail doesn't start until it's been inked. So we think that ink rails have been completely replaced by the grind rails. Now you may be wondering about the ink rails we saw back in Moray Towers back in the original trailer. They worked exactly like they did originally. Well, this actually ties into our point as we see that multiplayer stages will feature as portions of levels in the single player as well. In this case, Moray Towers, only at dusk. The stage mostly looks the same as it did in the original game, except with Octo Snipers all around, and a few other additions that we'll address soon. But the big thing is that the Inkling is using the grind rail, and there's no sign of the traditional ink rail. To us, this lends further evidence that it's been replaced. Now of course, it could only be for the single player, but that doesn't make sense to us for one major reason. The grind rails are way more active than the ink rails. There's a sense of speed, you can shoot while moving, and thanks to the originals, you'd be left open in multiplayer if the bulb is inked by the opposite color. The grind rails remove the problem of being instantly splatted in that case, and instead we could see players being damaged and knocked off, leading to more risk. But it might be worth it because of the extra speed. For all these reasons, we really believe the grind rails are the new ink rails. Now, the grind rails actually reveal something else, but before we touch on that, there's something that needs to be pointed out about Moray Towers. We can actually see 4, probably 5, Zapfishes in need of rescue. Each one is being used to power a spotlight. This is the first time we've seen more than one Zapfish at a time, meaning they might not mark the end of a level, and instead all the Zapfish need to be saved first. Or there could be a primary Zapfish with others that could be saved for extra bonuses in each level. It's hard to say for sure, but Moray Towers isn't the only example of multiple Zapfish in a level, as we'll point out another in the future. A tinier note to make is that we see the armor upgrade in Moray Towers as well, and it doesn't appear to have changed at all. In addition, there's a turret for the Inkling to use that will certainly help against the Octo Snipers. Let's go back to the grind rails though. The first time we saw them, the Inkling was equipped with the splatter shot. The second time, the Inkling was using the splat dualies. More importantly, the giant mechanical octopus denotes that this is the same stage. This is the proof that players won't be forced to use a particular weapon, and there could be at least some form of choice for what weapon is equipped in each level. It's not just the splatter shot and splat dualies that'll be available in the single player though. The first weapon Sheldon drops off is the Hero Charger, and we soon see the Inkling equipped with a Hero Slosher, Hero Blaster, Hero Splatling, and Hero Roller. Every weapon category in the multiplayer can be used during single player, which is a really good idea. It provides players with a way to become familiar with their favorite weapon of choice and devise ways to get around obstacles. Again, we're not sure how the weapons will be exchanged, but Sheldon will provide them once they are. And the hero versions will likely be a kind of unlock for the multiplayer. Returning to where we left off in the trailer, there's another new stage setting. This one also has wooden platforms, but the water is far below. The more exciting element here is a new hazard, rolling mats. Shooting them with ink causes them to unfurl temporarily. They have to be shot again to keep it open. Not too bad, except there's a line of shielded Octo Troopers firing at you as well. They've seen a slight redesign where instead of a small window to look through the shield, the entire thing is translucent. However, they're not much of a threat in this situation as they can all be instantly splatted once the other mat is rolled out, as we see happen. There's also a zapfish in the background indicating the end of the level, if only because it's highlighted by signs all around. The mat that's rolled out actually covers a grate, which could mean that there's a secret beneath once it rolls back up. But we don't get too good of a look at it. Instead, we see some neon signs depicting bowling pins on the opposite side. This is quite fitting considering the next scene shows Octarians stuffed into giant bowling balls. But all around them is a stage filled with even wilder decorations. We see more signs pointing us in the right direction, along with a stack of giant tuna cans. Oddly enough, there's a line with written notes hanging from it thanks to clothespins. To the right, there's a neon sign above that makes it seem as if all of this is part of some carnival. More importantly, we see our first sign of a power-up, likely a can special. And as we'll see later, special weapons are certainly here in the single player. Returning to the Octo Bowlers, as we'll call them, they seem to continuously come out based on the boxes in the distance. There may be a finite amount, but it's hard to say from this limited look. However, this does show that the Octarian tucks into the thumbhole as the ball rolls forward. We see another set of Octo Bowlers as the trailer continues. The same hanging sign from before is here once again, likely meaning that this is the same stage. The biggest change-up though is the Octo Sniper firing from the opposite side, and as a cool touch we can see the air distort around his blast of ink, indicating just how much pressure is behind the burst. But the ink that lands on the metal doesn't stay around, which is why the Octo Bowlers aren't leaving a trail either. This is all likely down to making crossing this area much trickier. But one thing we don't understand is why one of the bowling balls is orange. There's a little purple on it, but nothing compared to the others. Why the difference? Next up, we meet another new Octarian. This one seems stationary due to its size and the fact that it has a comfy foldable chair. Strangely, it's lined with what might either be glow sticks or small sticks of dynamite. Likely the latter considering we watch him regurgitate a huge bundle of dynamite. Unfortunately, we don't get to see its effects, but we'd imagine the ink explosion would be quite big. Octo Troopers are still able to attach themselves to the side of platforms as we see here. But more importantly, there's this really big Octarian blimp that emerges from the opening doors. Its face is merely printed on, and we can see it move thanks to the propellers on either side. It does have a weak point though, as we can see a tentacle emerging from the very top. However, we're not provided a better look at it in the trailer, although Nintendo did release a screenshot showing the Octo Blimp from the side. It's with this that we get a sense for just how massive it is, and how it could be really tricky to take down. Even the ink charger doesn't look like it could reach the tentacle. But here's the interesting thing about the ink charger. The other moment that we see the Octo Blimp in the trailer is as Sheldon is delivering the charger at the checkpoint. This could mean that the player did indeed specifically request a charger for this situation. The scene also provides a little more information on the strange floating objects that have fishhooks attached to the bottom. For some reason, they fill with yellow ink. To what end, we're not sure, but could the Inkling be able to swing from hook to hook in some way? We really can't be sure, though the possibility is pretty cool. Along with an Octo Blimp, there's also large Octo Missiles. The two face designs are similar, but the missiles are propelled by a jet in the back rather than the propeller. It's also not as large, but as we can see, there's a lot more to worry about. The design is odd as well, with a bullet strapped around the Octarian while it rests in the center. We can even see its body jiggle. This is likely where it needs to be shot in order to be splatted. The scene leaves two big questions. One, can these missiles home in on the player, or do they travel in a straight line? And two, What is that yellow glow in the background? We can see it pulse, but it's different from the hooks we saw before. What could its purpose be? Continuing the rollout of new Octarians is this one with sunglasses and a beret. It resembles the Octo Sniper, except it uses a Splatling gun attachment instead for rapid-fire attacks. For some reason, this also causes a propeller behind it to spin rapidly. We're not sure why, since the Octarian is breathing into a tube to shoot out the ink. In fact, there's a great bit of animation here when the Octarian stops, as he has to take a deep breath to the point where his eyes roll back into his head. It's a rough job, but behind him we also see that, unsurprisingly, rotating platforms are returning to the single player as well. Next, we had mentioned the return of canned specials, and these scenes show that a few will be available. The first takes place in the same blue ocean stage with the sandbox that we actually saw from a distance before. The splashdown seems to work just like it does in the multiplayer, but the Inkling has some major height here, so perhaps it's still possible to use the splashdown in the middle of a super jump, clearing the way of enemies. The other special is used in a stage amongst some skyscrapers. There's a lot of Octotroopers below, which could mean that more enemies can be on screen at once now, though it's more likely an isolated example to show what the Octo Missiles are capable of. These are the only two specials shown, but we'd expect at least one more, as the first Splatoon featured 3 specials during single player: the Bubbler, the Inkzooka, and the Bomb Rush. But this portion of the level is notable otherwise because of all the locked containers. It would indicate that the key returns as an item, and the next scene actually confirms this, as one of the Octotroopers drops that key. There's definitely plenty of returning elements as well as new. During the next few clips, we get a short look at several other stages. One includes a teacup ride tilted on its side and tracks below. Another is a neon-inspired stage with lava lamps all around and pieces of highway serving as the platforms, as well as the Zapfish in the upper left corner. Mysteriously, there's a circle of glowing green light just ahead, but no indication of whether it's part of the level or just aesthetics. Another level features targets that must be shot and rotated in order to bring out platforms with another farther up. This is done with the Splatling, but we're pretty sure all the weapons would do just fine as well. Next, we see more of the contraption that releases Octobowlers, except the Inkling has a way to defend against them simply by inking the geyser to destroy all 3 at once, so the bowling balls are certainly not invincible. Next is an example of the slosher in action while the platform rotates and the player must handle 2 Octarian Splatling turrets. Nothing too new, but we see a bit more of the stage in the background, as well as the Zapfish to end the level just beyond. A strange addition, though, is a car that rotates with the platform. We've seen cars in the Reef already, and they don't have any special function, though it may serve as a great way to dodge incoming fire. The car appears again in the next scene as the Inkling uses the Charger's new ability to take down the Octarian in one swift shot. But the most impressive weapon in action is the Blaster, which is able to splat the shielded Octotroopers with little trouble. All the player has to do is jump and shoot in order to arc the shot to the defenseless side of the Octarian. It all shows how different tactics can be used based on the weapon you may be able to choose. It looks like the invisible platforms may return as well, though I suppose we can't actually see them. We think they might be there because we can see an octopod holding an orange crate on the right side, while a nearby searchlight appears suspended in mid-air. Granted, a lot of Octarian landscape seems to just float there, but this feels a little strange. The stage itself also seems to have a snow theme, at least based on the world below. But the coolest detail is in the forefront. Not only do we see that the Octobrush will have a hero version as well, but we see the return of the Twinticle Octotrooper with a minigun turret, and we can even see it use one tentacle to rotate the turret while it slams on the button to fire its ink as fast as possible. It's just a cool addition. Naturally, the Octolings are back as well. It's difficult to say exactly where she's at, but she does have new eyewear that gives her a case of the Terminator eye. It's completely different eyewear from the first game and could be quite significant. But for now, we see that the Octolings can use different weapons as well. In this case, a splat roller, though it does make us wonder if these Octoling rollers will also be unlocked for use in the multiplayer. It'd be a shame to let it go to waste. We're then treated to a fight against the Octolings, and we think we might know where. Previous battles against them were often in stages based around multiplayer levels or even levels that would become part of the multiplayer. In this case, it looks like the level is based on the humpback pump track as far as we can tell from the nearby ramps. As the Inkling dodges around the Octoling, we see the nearby Zapfish, but it isn't the only one as another is far in the background. So like the Moray Towers, this level features multiple Zapfish to rescue. It may be possible that multiple Zapfish will only appear in levels based around the multiplayer stages, though we're not sure why that would be the case. The final aspect of this stage is a new hazard in the form of a spray nozzle that creates a warning bubble for where it's soon going to spread its ink. We don't see it in action, but this definitely provides players with a chance to get out of the way. One thing we're not sure of is if there will be stealth sections. This scene with a Twinticle operating a flying stamper almost indicates that there is, but the Inkling doesn't step into the light and also doesn't attempt to hide. But the way the stamper's inside lights change to red, it almost makes it seem like a mistake was made and the Inkling was caught. But it could also easily be an obstacle with the red lights indicating that it's obviously on your tail. It's too short of a clip to say for sure. We're then provided our first close-up look at the Zapfish, which seems largely unchanged. You'll even have to free him in the same way. A bigger question, literally, is whether this Octarian is a boss or a mini-boss. It's huge, fought in a large arena, and has multiple faces, making us think that this may actually be a boss. And it's definitely different as the Octarians appear baked into bread. Even the central device looks like multiple ovens spliced together with dials and openings like, well, an oven. It attacks by having the bread faces burst out, and we can see the individual loaves on the side. However, since it missed with the attack, its face is left wide open as indicated by the shocked look. We'd guess that each face has to be splatted in turn, and this one already has a little blue ink covering its top. It's a clear sign that the bosses will be just as crazy and inventive this time around. An actual mini-boss might exist though from what we can see of this new Octarian. He's dressed like a biker except he rides a unicycle, the most threatening of bikes. He's equipped with a roller and we see he attacks by swinging it in a circle around him, making him a little harder to approach. A screenshot released by Nintendo also shows how threatening his roller can be, as it's made up of tires. He's not invincible though, as we can also see him held up in our own ink. So maybe not a mini-boss, but definitely a more threatening enemy. The last thing we see in the trailer is a poster for the single player that actually covers a lot of what we've seen. There's the new Octarians, our Inkling, Marie, Sheldon, Sheldon's drone, the bread boss, the Octo Missile, the Stamper, and the Octoling with the Terminator eye. But there's also new things. We can see DJ Octavio's tentacle on the top left, based on the Telltale Scar. And then there's the mysterious figure in the top center, who is almost certainly Callie. What exactly happened to her, we don't know, but she may be under control if only because her style of sunglasses matches the Octolings. There's definitely a lot of potential in this situation. Okay, we're almost done here, but there's still a few more screenshots to look over. The first features the beach-themed stage once again, but it also contains the new interface. The life meter has changed from a segmented bar to 3 squid symbols, and we can see that there are more sunken scrolls to be found, as well as a counter for the power eggs. But there's another mystery item to collect next to the scroll symbol. It's not clear what it could actually be. The object looks pretty thin, so maybe there's an upgrade to be found? Maybe as you find upgrades, Sheldon makes the hero weapons available in his shop for multiplayer? Or could this be something else entirely? We also get a better look at the flying Octo Troopers, who have made their turrets from squid recycling bins. Maybe they're the only things light yet sturdy enough to be lifted by a single balloon? And another screen features an even bigger version of the bowling ball, with 2 Octarians acting as the pilot and a glass shield keeping them from being squashed. And once again, just behind it is another Zapfish. The next screenshot shows the neon level once again. We can see another Stamper above and near a glass tube that has speakers inside. To the right is a pair of eyes stuck to the wall and an armor upgrade on top of a sponge block. It's even possible to see the light from a Zapfish shining from above. But another thing we wanted to note is how everything is colored pink and green. Callie and Marie's colors. It almost gives off the party atmosphere of a Splatfest. Could this be one of the later levels and perhaps feed into Callie's possible hidden grudge at losing the last Splatfest? Another screenshot shows another example of the grind rail, but this doesn't seem to be part of the level with the giant mechanical octopus. Instead, this rail circles around a central tower where we have to contend with some Octarians. The whole aesthetic is like a space station, and we can once again see the Zapfish in the background. More rail grinding is shown in the next image with some kind of contraption in the background. Could it be a structure, or is it possible that this is a boss that must be fought while rail grinding? The former seems more likely, but the latter would be awesome. The final screenshot provides another look at the returning Octoling, who is equipped with a slosher this time. This definitely means the Octolings will be able to use any weapons the Inklings can. It's a great way to prepare players for all the different weapons they'll face in the turf wars. But that's everything we could find in the single-player trailer for Splatoon 2, which turns out to be a lot. The hero mode is looking every bit as fun as the first game, with some excellent new gameplay ideas and still plenty of mystery. It won't be long until we're all playing the game in July, and it cannot come soon enough. Until then, let us know if we missed anything in the comments. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on Splatoon and other things gaming.